Rebecca and I have gotten to know each other well. 4 days on safari in Tanzania and a week climbing the tallest freestanding peak in the world will do that. We look much better today than we did on the mountain. My background is actually a photograph that Amanda, who's on this call, took that is of summit night. While I was preparing for today, there was a quote. Yes, it's Stella Peak. There was a quote that kept, rising in my head, and it kept repeating to me. And it's one that I live by, and I know Rebecca does too. And it is, if your dreams don't scare you, they're not big enough. That quote was said by Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. She is the 24th president of Liberia, and I believe their first female president. So there's something that happens when you're in the midst of achieving a BHAG goal. At least for me, I come alive, my mind, body, and spirit synergize, and there's a feeling of joy and bliss. In a physical challenge, I'm not going to tell you that I'm not hurting or aching, but there's this point where it all comes together and you're completely present and in the moment. And it's a moment of euphoria. And it's something that I highly recommend. And our speaker today completely understands this. So let me tell you about my friend, Rebecca. So Rebecca Walsh is a former U.S. Army officer. I think you were a combat officer, an outdoor leader, and a breast cancer survivor. She traded in leading troops for leading a global movement of women in the outdoors. She's the founder of Hike Like a Woman, which is a community and guiding platform that she launched in 2014 to help women replace self-doubt with earned confidence, the kind that comes from setting audacious goals. If I can change the page. And following through even when the terrain gets uncomfortable. A breast cancer survivor who views every trail as a victory lap, Walsh has led more than 50 hikes and international expeditions, creating inclusive spaces where women can build resilience, confidence, and community, something that we know about here at Women in the Industry. And she does it through shared challenge. With a background in tactical leadership, outdoor retail, and expedition guiding, she's known for her clear-eyed, no BS approach to helping women silence their inner critic through clarity and action. She's a graduate of the Norwich University with a master's degree in educational leadership. Rebecca believes that courage is a muscle that's built by doing hard things with purpose. Her work has been featured in Sports Illustrated Swimsuit and on Minnesota Public Radio. When she's not leading expeditions, Rebecca lives in Wyoming with her husband and 2 teenage boys and a very spoiled puppy. She's here to remind women everywhere that while climbing might be challenging, the woman you become on the way up changes everything. So join me in welcoming Rebecca Walsh.
Thank you, Michelle. Let's get the party started here.
I'm gonna dance by myself like nobody's watching. Don't really care if my rhythm's off, 'cause I'm gonna dance like nobody's watching me. I'm gonna dance by myself like nobody's watching. Don't really care if my rhythm's off, 'cause I'm gonna dance like nobody's watching me. I'm gonna dance, 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 dance. I'm gonna dance, 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 dance. I'm gonna dance, dance, dance like nobody's watching me. I'm gonna
Thank you, Michelle. We have to start.
I'm gonna dance. I'm gonna dance.
In 1994, I really wanted to be an MTV VJ. And I don't even know. Now when I say the word VJ, it sounds a little bit naughty. But I wanted to host dance parties in some of the most beautiful places in the world. And I do that now, but I also lead hikes and women on big adventure trips in some of the most beautiful places in the world. And sometimes in life, we are just trudging down the trail and everything is beautiful, everything is gorgeous, and it's nothing but a dance party. But sometimes we are walking down the trail of life and things happen. Maybe we have to make a really difficult decision at work. Maybe we're changing careers. Maybe we don't get along with our boss. Maybe we're having problems with our relationships. And we have these big stumbling blocks on our path. Sometimes we're walking down the trail of life and we have little obstacles hit our way, like some a-hole cuts us off in traffic, or like last night I ordered a pizza for my family and I expected this gigantic pepperoni pizza loaded with pepperonis, but there were like 3 pieces of pepperoni on the pizza and it was just a big circle of disappointment. So we have these big things that happen and then these little disappointments that happen. And for me, one of the most challenging obstacles that has ever occurred on my path of life was a diagnosis of breast cancer when I was 42 years old. So I'm trudging down the trail of life. Everything is great. Suddenly I find a lump in my breast and I have a breast cancer diagnosis. So I do all the breast cancer things, you know, I go to 1,000,000 doctor's appointments. I talk to my insurance company. I do a couple surgeries. I have chemotherapy. I have radiation. And as I'm finishing up the active portion of my treatment, I needed a lot of physical therapy for some side effects that I've been having from treatment, right? So I go into the physical therapy office and the physical therapist has her little measurer thing out and she's measuring all these range of motion all over my body. And then she says, "Hey, Rebecca, why don't you stand up because I'd really like to test your balance. Let's just see how your balance is." So I'm like, that's cute that you want to test my balance. Because before cancer, I was a cross-country ski instructor and I was a mountain guide and I was leading women on these big expeditions. And I owned an outdoor retail store and a ski shop. So I like to think I was pretty good at balance. So anyway, I'm back in the physical therapy office. The therapist says, "Let's check your balance." So I stand up off of the physical therapy table and I stand up and I'm facing a cabinet that's against a wall, right? And the therapist grabs her clipboard and she says, "Let's just see how long you can stand on one foot." So I lift up my left leg and I firmly plant my right leg. The therapist counts to 1 and I start to wobble a little bit. The therapist says 2 and my right leg completely starts to shake. The therapist says 3 and I have to reach out and grab the cabinet in front of me because my balance had gotten so bad during cancer treatment that I couldn't even stand on one foot. So I was feeling pretty discouraged about this. As someone who prides themselves in being an athlete, I was like, what do you mean I can't even stand on one foot? I got through the physical therapy appointment. I head out to my car in the parking lot. It's a beautiful fall morning, but I don't even see the beauty around me. Instead, I crawl into my car and I start to cry. And these aren't just like little beautiful tears. They are like full on sobbing tears. There's snot on tears all over my face. I'm really losing it in my car. And right next to me, there's a blue Prius. And there's this dude trying to get into his blue Prius. And he's kind of looking at me as he's opening the door and he's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, great. I'm totally good." And he was like, "Are you sure? Do you want me to call someone? Do you need some help?" And I was like, "No, I'm fine. I'm fine." And I wasn't fine. And I think sometimes we expect life to just be perfectly balanced and perfectly in sync. But we never know what's going to happen as we continue down this path of life. So I kind of want to get a feel for the room. I don't know much about the industry you're in, but I'd love to know kind of a little bit more about you before we dive deeper into what I'm going to talk about today. But I do, so maybe like in the chat here right now, let's check the weather in the room. So there should be a poll popping up here in a second. I think, Ryan, if you can help with that poll. I'd like to know how's your balance today? You can either share this in the chat or you can keep it internal. That's up to you. But let's just take a few seconds to see how you're doing. So maybe you're a pro and you're holding like the perfect tree pose in yoga and you're not wobbling at all. Maybe you're wobbling just a little bit. Maybe you're feeling upright, but you're starting to get a little shaky. Or maybe you're holding onto a cabinet for dear life. Maybe you're just like white knuckling a cabinet trying to stay upright. Or maybe you are in the drop zone. Maybe you have hit the ground with a thud and you're just trying to get back up. So let's maybe take a second in the poll here and tell me where you're at today.
Ryan, is the poll up?
Poll is running.
Great.
Poll is running. So while you're thinking about that, today I'm going to talk a little bit about what happens when the ground shifts underneath our feet and when it leaves us gasping for air. And I want to talk about how we can use our mind, our body, and our soul to help keep our eyes on the horizon, no matter how unstable and how difficult things feel. So that is what we are going to talk about today. Now I spent, let's check those poll results. What's coming in? All right, everybody's still asleep. I know I'm kind of still asleep because it's like 7 o'clock in the morning here in Wyoming. But let's talk about
Rebecca, you have an overwhelming 69% that say that they're wobbling.
Oh, there, I can see the results. They popped up. So yeah, right. I think that like we're not alone, right? And Michelle talked a little bit earlier about a mentorship program. And one of my biggest regrets is that I'm in the outdoor industry and I feel like we don't have mentors in the outdoor industry for women. And I'm so excited to see that happening in your industry because I think mentors can really help us with that wobble. So yeah, thank you for sharing in that poll. So I mentioned before that I'm in the outdoor industry, but before I was in the outdoor industry, I spent 18 years in the United States Army. And I did a lot of stuff in the Army that wasn't very cool, like lots of PowerPoint slides. Do we have any veterans out there, any veterans in the audience, any former military officers or non-commissioned officers? Then you know that PowerPoint is what keeps the Army running. But I also did some really cool stuff in the Army. And one of the coolest things that I got to do in the Army was jump out of airplanes. And I went to this thing called Airborne School when I was a second lieutenant in the United States Army. And Airborne School is a 3-week school where you learn how to jump out of airplanes. The first week of Airborne School is called Ground Week. And that's when the Army teaches you how to land and how to land safely without getting hurt. It's called a PLF or a parachute landing fall. You spend a whole week learning how to fall. The second week of Airborne School is called Tower Week. And this is the week where you learn how to exit a fake airplane. And then on the third week of Airborne School, you put all of those things back together. That is called Jump Week. And that's the week that you actually get to jump out of a C-130 Hercules airplane. So it is Jump Week at Airborne School. I am the only female officer left. Every single officer has either been injured or quit. So I'm feeling a ton of pressure to represent female officers all over the world by graduating from airborne school. And I think as professional women, we often feel like that. Like we put a lot of pressure on ourselves, and sometimes we have something to prove. We have to show everybody that we can do it, that we're good, that we're enough all the time. It's exhausting, right? Has anyone ever felt like that? Like, oh my gosh, I have so much pressure that I've just put on myself because I have something to prove. So that's what I'm feeling. Now it is jump week, and I'm getting ready for my first jump. And I'm super nervous, but I'm trying not to let everybody around me know how scared and nervous I am. It's time for our very first jump. So we're sitting in this long, huge building. It's almost like a big warehouse at Fort Benning, Georgia. We're in all of our Army gear. We have our helmet on. We have a parachute strapped to our back. Our reserve chute is strapped to our belly. So we kind of look like we're a little bit pregnant with this reserve chute on our belly. We're sitting on it's like a wooden church pew. We're sitting down. The jump master is coming down the line of wannabe paratroopers, and the jump master comes and we stand up and he checks all of our equipment. He checks our harness, checks our reserve chute. We're in this warehouse, right? And it's really, really hot because it's Fort Benning, Georgia. And the warehouse smells like an Army surplus store. And like if you had a Taco Bell bean burrito and you left it in your car overnight, like it's just sensory overload. There's a lot of fear in the air. The chaplain is like doing chaplain things with people who are into chaplain things. And it's just like this feeling of excitement and stress because you're about to jump out of an airplane, and that's dangerous. So our first jump comes around and we stand up and we shuffle our way out to the C-130. We load up on the airplane and we sit down with all of our gear on, and the airplane takes off. And it's this really weird feeling to take off with an airplane and know that you're not going to land with the airplane. For some reason, the jump master thought it would be a good idea to send me out the door first. So, if there's a huge line of paratroopers headed out the door, you just follow the person in front of you and you don't even have time to think. But when you're the first person out the door, you're not following, you are leading. And that's a little bit scary to be the first one out the door on your first jump. I think the jump masters were totally messing with me. But all of a sudden we're sitting in the airplane's taken off. We are just about over the drop zone. I hear some radio traffic between the pilot and the jump master, which indicates that we're getting close to the drop zone. The jump master, he stands up and he leans out the door of the airplane and he looks up and he looks down, he looks left, he looks right. He's inspecting to make sure that the door of the aircraft and that everything is safe, that there's not any obstacles in the way. He determines that it's safe and that we're over the drop zone. He gives us the command to stand up. So we all stand up. He tells us to hook up. So we hook our line up to a cable that's running the length of the airplane. And then he tells us to check our equipment. So we check our equipment. We check, it starts from the back of the plane. Everybody's checking everybody else's equipment. They're giving you a little tap and saying all clear, all good. And then finally, he gives us the command to go. So I pivot so I can exit the aircraft. I release I hand in my static line. I tuck my chin and I keep my feet together. I take a step and all of a sudden I am floating through the sky. Actually, I'm being like hurled from a C-130 that's going 1,000,000 miles an hour, way far above the ground, right? So I do exactly what I'm told. I keep this nice compact body position and I count 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4. And then I feel a tug as my parachute opens. And I do exactly what I learned in training, exactly what we've been rehearsing for 3 weeks. I grab onto my risers and I look up and I check my canopy. I make sure that my parachute is open and that I'm safe. And then I keep my eyes on the horizon as I just slowly drop to the ground. It's the most incredible feeling. I've never felt anything like jumping out of an airplane. It's amazing. So I slowly drop to the ground. And as I get closer to the ground, I hit with like this graceful, gentle thud. I execute a textbook parachute landing fall. It was beautiful, you guys. I'm like, man, when I get out of the Army, Red Bull's gonna want me for some of their stunt videos because I am so good at jumping out of airplanes, right? I'm a young second lieutenant. I am just drenched in adrenaline and arrogance. Like, I think I am God's gift to the Army at this point. So I gather up my parachute and I run off the drop zone and I'm feeling really, really good about myself. But something happened on my 4th jump. You have to do 5 jumps to graduate from airborne school. So jump 1, I'm feeling really good. 2, 3, 4, like I'm God's gift to the paratroopers, you guys. My 4th jump rolls around and something happens. Something really bad happens. So I exit the aircraft, right? I have this perfect body position. My chin is tucked. My body is tight. And then I reach up and I grab my risers. I check my canopy. And then instead of keeping my eyes directly on the horizon, for some reason, I spread my legs a little bit and I look down. And when I look down, I'm not gracefully falling through the sky. I am like plummeting to the earth. I am falling to my death. The ground is coming so quickly, I panic. And just before I hit the ground, I point my toes. And I hit the ground with my toes pointed. I land like a ballerina. Like if a ballerina and a sack of rocks met, that is exactly how I landed. When I hit the ground, I heard this crunch. Like if you were to take a bundle of spaghetti and just go, like that's the sound that I heard. I hit the ground. I hear this crunch and instantly pain just shoots up from my toes all the way up my legs. And at that point, I had to make a decision. I had 2 choices. I could either lay on the ground in my misery and yell for a medic and hobble off the drop zone and not finish airborne school and not earn my airborne wings and not be like the total badass that I thought I was, or I could take a deep breath, compose myself, gather my parachute, and walk off the drop zone. I could walk off the drop zone. I could somehow find the strength to make it through my 5th jump to earn my airborne wings. So I'd love to know in the chat right now, what would you do? What would you do if you had suddenly landed really, really hard on the drop zone? Would you call for help, or would you just find a way to push through the pain? Now, I probably didn't make the best decision. I don't know that young second lieutenants always make the best decision, but I decided that I wasn't going to let an injury stop me from graduating from airborne school. So I was a soldier and I was tough. So I sucked it up and I walked off that drop zone. When I got back to my quarters that night, the Olson Hall at Fort Benning, Georgia, and I took my boots off, I saw this massive bruise from my pinky toe all the way up to my ankle. So I took a lot more painkillers than I should have. I iced my feet all night, and somehow I was able to make it through my final jump of airborne school to earn my airborne wings. Now, this isn't a story about like me being awesome, but it's a story about humility. And it's a story about what happens when we take our eyes off of the horizon. Now, I would love to know in the comments right now, and we'll take just a couple minutes to maybe talk in the chat here, but I'd like to know, is there anything that's stealing your horizon? Is there anything that's getting in the way of your mind and your body and your soul being balanced and being in sync? And we talked a little bit about wobbling, and I think it's okay to wobble, and I think wobbling means that we're human. But maybe just take a second and reflect on what's going on with your horizon right now. And while you do that, I'm going to caffeinate.
Rebecca, almost every comment has been go for that fifth.
Yeah.
This group would walk off and go for it.
Yeah. It's but that's the hard decision. The easy decision would be to just lay there in agony. So I'm glad that we talked a little bit about horizons, and Michelle mentioned Kilimanjaro before, and we also have Amanda on the call who was on Kilimanjaro with us. Is there anyone else from our Kili group who's here? If there are, like, sound off, let us know you're around, because it's a powerful experience to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. So since cancer, I have summited Mount Kilimanjaro twice. I'm actually headed back to Kilimanjaro in September. So if anyone is out there and you're like, oh, I feel like I need a big adventure, I feel like I need to see what I'm made of, I want a challenge, I want a cultural opportunity, then definitely join me for my next Kilimanjaro climb. But there's something about Mount Kilimanjaro that's really special to me, because it's like it was like my cancer finish line, right? So on Mount Kilimanjaro, the route that I like to choose is the 7-day Machame route. So basically you spend 5.5 days of hiking over some really beautiful terrain. You start in the rainforest, you end up in the Arctic zone, and then you go back down. So you climb hard for 5.5 days. You get to base camp, or Barafu, which is just over 15,000 feet after 5.5 days of hiking. You get to Barafu in the afternoon. The guides feed you lunch. They tell you to take a nap, and then they feed you dinner, and they tell you to go back to bed, and then they wake you up before midnight for your summit push. Now, the summit of Mount Kilimanjaro is 19,341 feet. So it is no joke. It is high altitude hiking, but it's incredible. Now, on my very first Kilimanjaro climb, I was leading a group of 23 women. And on summit night, we decided to break into smaller groups of 2 to 3 women, 1 to 2 women with a guide, so that everybody could hike at her own pace and really have an amazing summit night experience. So you start hiking at a little after midnight, you get to the summit just after the sun rises, and then you have to go back down 4,000 feet to get back to base camp. And then that final day, you head back to your final camp. So when I talk about summit night, it's really, you start hiking around midnight and you hike until 10, 11, noon the next morning, however long it takes you to get from base camp to the summit and then back down. So I had gotten to the summit, and I had come down from the summit, and I was at our base camp. I was changing clothes, I was eating a snack, I was watching as women from our group were slowly descending the mountain and coming back down to base camp. And I'm in my tent, and I remember this very vividly. I'm in my tent, and I'm pulling off my crusty socks. My socks were disgusting. So I'm changing my clothes, I'm pulling off my sock, I'm looking at my phone, and all of a sudden I see a notification. The notification is from a woman named Darla, and Darla, if you're out there, hi Darla. Thanks for letting me share your story. So I see a notification from Darla in our group chat, and this notification says, my guide has left me. I don't know where I am. Get me the F off this mountain. And instantly my mind starts to panic, right? Like my body is broken because I was just on the summit of Mount Kilimanjaro. My mind is spiraling, wondering what happened with Darla and why her guide left her. And in my soul, I'm nervous because I don't know what's going to happen. So I rush out of our tent and I see John, our lead guide, at his tent. So I run over to his tent and I say, John, Darla's still on the mountain. She's still near the summit. Her guide has left her. Something is wrong. I don't know what's going on. John, she needs your help. And John looks at me. Okay, we'll see what's going on. So John grabs 4 guides who had just come off the summit, so they're exhausted. He grabs 4 guides, and those 4 guides head up to the mountain to find Darla. Meanwhile, all the other women are back at base camp, and we're trying to eat, and we're watching up the mountain. We're trying to see if we can see Darla come down. We don't know what's going on. I see the guides at their camp over here, and they're kind of like in a frenzy trying to figure out what's going on. Eventually, we see Darla coming down the mountain, and she's flanked by, I have a picture of this. Let me show you a picture. We see Darla coming down the mountain. And Darla is flanked by, naturally, I forgot all my slides. Okay, so we see Darla. Darla's coming down the mountain. She's flanked by a couple guides, and she's in rough shape. I asked one of the guides, I was like, did you leave Darla? What was going on? And the guide said Darla was sick, and so he couldn't get a call down to base camp. So he had told Darla to sit on a rock while he stepped away to make a call. And so that kind of eased the confusion about where was her guide. So we see Darla come down the mountain. I talked to her guide. One of the porters puts Darla in her tent. I crawl into Darla's tent with her, and I have some wilderness first responder training. And the instant I crawl into her tent and start talking to her, I can just see in her eyes that something's wrong. I can see that there's something going on behind her eyes. It's not okay. She's not okay. I start to ask her a few questions. I'm like, Darla, do you know where we are? Do you know what you just did? Can you tell me what happened? And Darla couldn't tell me the story of what had happened to her when she was coming off of the summit. All I knew was that she was really angry, and she was really, really upset, and she was just stressed out. She was exhausted. And instantly I thought back to all of my wilderness first responder training, and I knew that Darla was suffering from HACE, or high altitude cerebral edema, where fluid in your brain starts to swell, and it causes all these things that I was seeing on her: anger, confusion. I could see that. And before I could even do a bigger assessment on her, I stepped out. John was standing outside in my tent, and I said, John, something's not right. I said, I think that Darla has HACE, and I don't even know if I'm qualified to make that medical diagnosis, but I think something's going on. And John was very calm, and he said, Rebecca, I have seen this before, and we must prepare Darla to leave camp immediately. So instantly we try to help Darla get her clothes changed. Someone fills up her water bottles, and then before we know it, she's just being dragged down the mountain to a safe elevation by a group of guides and porters. And during that moment, John had sight of the horizon. Darla's body was failing. My spirit was sinking. My mind was spiraling, but John kept the balance within the group because his mind knew exactly what to do in that precise moment. His eyes were on the horizon, and it was the kind of calm, cool, focused leadership that our group needed in that very frantic moment when we were faced with an urgent medical emergency. Mind, body, spirit, eyes on the horizon, staying balanced and focused. Now, I always tell this story and then I'm like, who wants to climb Kilimanjaro with me? But I will say that it's very safe climbing Kilimanjaro. This was a very rare occurrence. And I was really confident. It really instilled a lot of confidence in me with the guides that we select to climb Kilimanjaro. So Now I'd like to maybe take another second here in the chat. I'd love to know about a time in your career where it was super crucial for you to keep your eyes on the horizon, a time where it was so important for you to stay balanced and to stay focused. And I'd love to know what you did to keep your eyes on the horizon. And if you have any tips or thoughts, let's share those in the comments here before we move on. Now, the nights on Mount Kilimanjaro are really dark. And for me, cancer and going through cancer treatment was a really, really dark time in my life. And a few months ago, I got a mammogram, and I get those a lot, right? And you should get your mammograms. But before cancer, I really liked both of my boobs equally. And I like my boobs. And, you know, my kids are always like, hey, Mom, do you have a favorite kid? And when they were little, I was like, I love you equally. But actually, I really love the one who isn't talking. And now that they're older and my kids are like, Mom, who do you like the most? I'm always like, I like the kid that's not asking me for money. So I had equal love for my boobs. But after cancer, I really started to fall in love with Lefty because Righty tried to kill me. And my husband and I call Righty murder boob because she did try to kill me. So I go in for my mammogram every 6 months. I have to get either an MRI or a mammogram just to make sure that I don't have cancer. So I'm getting a mammogram, and everybody out there who's been through a mammogram, you know that they're not the most awesome thing in the world. You're kind of like in this platform and your boobs being squished with like a waffle iron, but if the waffle iron were to 10-pound kettlebells. So you're being squished, and the lab tech's like, stop breathing. And I'm like, if I stop breathing, I'm gonna die. And I just worked really hard to not die. So I'm in the mammogram, and I get the images done, and then the tech's like, she steps out of the room so that the radiologist can look at the images. She comes back in and she's like, hey, the doctor just wants a few more images of your breast. We just want to make sure that everything's okay. And so I'm like, all right. So she takes more images, and then she steps out of the room, and then she comes back in and she says, we're just gonna send you in for an ultrasound because we want to really make sure that we got some good images of your breast tissue. And so I'm like, okay, I'm no stranger to ultrasounds. So I go into the ultrasound room, and it's dark, it's cold. The mammogram lady is super nice and super friendly, but the ultrasound lady is not super nice or friendly. She puts this cold jelly on murder boob over here. She's moving around the wand on murder boob. She's getting some images. She's taking some pictures of my boob. And then she's like, I need to step out. We're going to step out, have the doctor look at the images. She steps out. And all of a sudden, I am to spiral. My eyes are not on the horizon because I've been in that room before. And I know what it means when the doctor has to look a little bit more at your images. Right. So she steps out, doctor looks at her, the scans, she comes back in and she's like, I just need to get a few more, like, we're going to just do a little more scanning around. She puts more cold jelly on murder boobs. She's scanning things around. She's getting different images. She steps out again. And at this point, like, the horizon is completely gone. And all I see is complete and total blackness. I see myself falling down at physical therapy. I see my parachute not opening. I see Darla still on the mountain and not able to get down safely. At this point, I'm waiting for the tech to come back in and tell me that they need a biopsy. And I know in my mind that biopsy means cancer, right? So finally the door opens, and this time the doctor comes in. The doctor opens the door, and he comes in, and he's like, I just want to check something out. He puts some more cold jelly on murder boob here. He scans things around, and he's like, you're good. You're good. Everything is all good. And I breathe a sigh of relief, and I jump off the table and I hug him. I don't, because I have one boob hanging out, but I'm so relieved, right? And he says, I just wanted to make sure that everything was okay. You have a lot of scar tissue, so I just want to take my time with you and make sure that I'm seeing exactly what I need to see, that everything is okay. And at that moment, I realized that even though I'd lost my horizon, my body was fine. My mind was in the dirt, and my spirit was shattered, because even with all of my training, I lost my horizon. And that's the thing. You don't have to have a murder boob to lose your balance. And losing your balance, wobbling a little bit, that just means that you're human, and that life is sometimes going to throw you into a dark place. So yeah, as leaders, sometimes we're the ones holding up the flashlight, trying to help others navigate their way out of the darkness. And sometimes we're just in the darkness ourselves. And one of the things that I did to kind of come out of the cancer darkness was to go on a big adventure trip with my husband. Now, after going through cancer treatment, my husband and I went to Costa Rica because we just really needed to spend some time with each other. We needed to just like figure out some goals. We needed to process what we had just been through as a family. And one of the things we did in Costa Rica was this massive Tarzan swing. Has anyone out there ever done a Tarzan swing before? It's wild. So you stand on this platform, right? And you're standing on this platform, you're like 100 feet above the rainforest canopy, and you're attached to this platform, or you're attached with all these ropes and pulleys, and you can kind of see it in the slide there. But you have this harness on, and then there's like this big pulley. You stand on this platform, you hold on to this pulley thing, and then the guides release a lever, and that lever enables you, lets you kind of sway back and forth over the rainforest. And I'm not scared of heights. I love doing things that are kind of wild and crazy. So the guides have a word that you call, that you say when you want them to release the lever that allows you to swing over the canopy. You don't have to jump, you don't have to leap, you don't have to do anything. You just have to stand there and say a word. And our guide said, okay, when you're ready to leave the platform, I want you to say the word puerta. Now, I don't speak Spanish. I wish I did, but it's my understanding that puerta means door. And so they told us that when you say puerta, it's like the bull rider, it's like the bullpen, the doors of the bullpen opening when the bull rider comes out riding the bull. Now, I live in Wyoming. I didn't really like that imagery. I have been to enough rodeos to know that those bull riders are hanging on for dear life. But our word was puerta. So my husband goes first. He yells, puerta, and he's suddenly like swinging across the rainforest, and he's laughing. He's having so much fun. He finishes his swing, and now he's down below on the hill looking up at me. I'm all hooked in. I'm holding on to the pulley system, and I'm trying to say the word puerta, but I can't because I'm scared. I had just finished cancer treatment. My body's like, I don't think so, girl. Like, we worked really hard to like not have you get injured. Like, I don't think this is a good idea. And I can't do it. For some reason, I'm just frozen. I'm frozen. I'm looking down at my husband, who's like, you can do it. And my guides are like, try it. You should just try it. And all of a sudden, one of the guides walks over to me, and he was like, Rebecca, you don't have to do it. But I think if you do it, you're going to like it. He said, so what I want you to do, I want you to just put your eyes on the horizon, take a deep breath, and yell the word puerta, and you're going to be safe. So he steps away. I take a couple deep breaths. I think about everything that I've learned as a guide, everything that I've learned in the Army, everything that I've learned as a small business owner. And I say Puerta. And when I say Puerta, he releases the lever, and all of a sudden I'm flying across the canopy over the rainforest. And it's the most amazing feeling. And all I had to do was remind myself that it's okay to wobble, that it's okay to be unbalanced. We all feel like that. Our body, our mind, our soul, they don't always agree with each other. And life is hard, and leadership is hard, and work is hard, and being a human is hard. But we don't need to be perfect to stay upright. We just need to take a deep breath. We need to keep our eyes on the horizon, and we need to do our best not to point our toes when the ground comes rushing up to meet us. So today, I encourage you to take a deep breath. I encourage you to open the door. I encourage you to turn the light on, to look at the horizon, and to take the leap. So thank you so much for hanging out with me. Here's where you can find me online. I own a small company called Hike Like a Woman, and Michelle mentioned earlier that I take women on bucket list trips all over the world. We have some upcoming adventures. Like I said, if you want to join me on Kilimanjaro, it's incredible. I have a few openings for that in September. And then we just released our list of adventures for 2027. So go check it out. You can find me online, hikelikeawoman.com. I'll also mention I do have a handout with some journal prompts about body, mind, spirit, keeping your eyes on the horizon. So you can find that handout. And on that handout is a link to a playlist that kind of something you can listen to as you're working through those journal prompts during your leisure time. So thank you so much for having me.
Hey, Rebecca, there's you can look at the chat now. Rebecca didn't want to look at the chat while she was talking. She didn't want to get distracted, but there's some fantastic answers to the question that you asked about times that were tough and the way that people stayed focused and how they kept their eyes on the horizon. So I want to thank Rebecca for coming to be with us. If you haven't guessed, she is an amazing team leader at what she does. You can find her at Rebecca@hikelikeawoman.com. There is also a Hike Like a Woman Facebook page, so you can look for her. You can look for her there. I would like to thank our sponsors, Yamaha Watercraft, MarineMax, Ceto, West Marine, and MRAA. We could not do this without you. I would like to thank the community because without you, we're absolutely, none of this would be worthwhile. We hope that when you listen to these, that inspires you, not that you have to go climb Kilimanjaro, but that inspires you to think big, to dream of things that make you scared or achieve new goals. Don't forget about the upcoming program. So we have the mentorship that you'll hear about starting in April. The Global Women's Walk will happen again May 11th through the 18th, and we'll be back for a virtual event on June 17th.